Hi everybody, Rachel here from Rachthestamper.com, and today I'm going to show you how to make a pretty simple card. We're going to use sentiment from Peaceful Moments, and then we're going to use this little background piece from Label Me Bold. I got this idea for this card. It was a sketch that someone else did, and it was really simple. So I actually have two different versions. This is a really simple version here. It just has a piece of cardstock, a piece of DSP, and a stitched rectangle, which reminds me I have to grab those. So this is very easy. And then I also did one that is kind of more stepped up version. So this one has the background stamp stamped in really light soft seafoam in the background, and then I went ahead and embossed the panel, still added the DSP and then the stitched rectangle, and then you can also add these little jewels. Now these are currently on back order, so I'm actually going to do them with the Peaceful Moments sequins instead. Where are they? Here they are. These original ones are the From My Heart faceted gems. These will be back in stock, I believe, at either the end of February or the beginning of March. So they could be back in by the time you watch this video, but you can use either side of these. So they have this little sparkly part with the faceted. So you could either put them so the sparkly part is up. I put them on this one so it is actually down. So it's just flat gems on the top, but you can certainly flip them over as well. So it just kind of depends on what you want to do. But what I'm going to do for this is I'm actually going to exchange them out for the Peaceful Poppies sequins. So I did already mount the stamps, and what else I grabbed is I believe this is called the Basket Weave. This is actually from the Tropical Oasis suite. So I have most things ready here. So I have a thick piece of Whisper White. This is 5.5 by 8.5, score at 4 1/4. Then I have a piece of Old Olive, and I have to measure this. I think it's 2.5. Yep, 2.5 by 4.5 for that. I just have a little scrap piece of this left, so you could kind of make this as large or as small as you want. These are a little bit bigger. I feel like these are probably 1.5, and I think this one is 1 1/4. Yeah, so 1 1/4, and then I just kind of use whatever was left. So this is 1 1/4 by 3 3/4. This one you can either pop it into the banner triple punch if you wanted to, or you can flag the ends with your scissors. So kind of whatever you want to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this in just so I can see it from the bottom, kind of make sure it's centered, and then flip it over. The only thing is when you're doing it with this, sometimes I kind of like to be able to flag the end so it's less paper that's cut off. So if you cut it here, your piece is going to be significantly shorter. So when I do this, I kind of eyeball it and then trim it up. So you can see you have a little bit more of a point here. So if you wanted to, you could do these with your snips, your paper snips. Good gracious, I can't even think of the word today. And if for some reason you feel like this is going to be too long because it's a teeny bit longer than this, you could always trim some down or you could cut it again. So what we're going to do is we're going to emboss this piece again, which we have our Basket Weave folder. So we're going to emboss this one. And this piece we're going to stamp on, and then I just need one other little scrap piece. And let's see, this one might be just the perfect size. Yep. So this one we're going to stamp our greeting onto, and then we're going to cut this out with our stitched rectangle. Sorry about that. I don't know how I missed that one. But we're going to do this with the stitched rectangles. So you get a lot of sizes with these rectangles. They're really handy. You can do layering pieces if you layer them together, and you could cut out frames for squares. I'm sorry, frames for layering. So you could do that. We're going to use, I believe it is the second thinnest. Yeah. So this comes from the side piece. So you have this one little extra rectangle that kind of sits by itself. So then on the one side, you'll have 4 rectangles. So we're going to use the second one in, and then these all go back and kind of layer together. So lots of options for layering for this because you do get quite a lot of rectangles. So if you layer these together, you can see how many different rectangle shapes you can get. This one is even big enough that quite actually you can cut out an entire piece if you wanted to layer this on top. So you can see how big that is. So you could layer a really large rectangle and then stamp on it. And then you would have double stitching. So lots of possibilities for this. So let me just slide this over. So we're going to do as much of this as possible at the same time. So I'm going to grab my sentiment, and that is in Poppy Parade. And I'm going to kind of stick this down towards the end. That way I can just cut this out. So I'd usually like to sit my die on top, just kind of upside down, just so I can judge where I want to put it. And I do want it to be a little bit more towards the end because I'm going to put some of the poppy, or the sequins, the poppy sequins. So there's one. So all we have to do is cut this out. And then I'll do one more thing. We're just going to stamp our background. So I'm actually going to fold this and reinforce the fold with my bone folder. And then I'm going to stamp in soft seafoam just this little, it's a very nice background pattern. Now remember, we don't really need to hit the center because most of it is covered up. So I'm going to kind of just go around the edge. And I'm going to stamp off, kind of change directions. This one is going to look a little bit darker because since I did the first card, I actually re-inked it. And when I did the first card, it was really desperately in need of re-inking. I'm just going to kind of put a couple other ones just in case you might see a little peak sticking out from the background. So it kind of went mostly around the edge and then a few little parts on the middle. I will tell you one thing, when you have soft seafoam and it needs to be re-inked, it does not do well past first generation stamping. This one looks really good because it's freshly inked, but you can totally tell the difference between this one that really needed inking. I couldn't even get a second generation stamping out of this. Okay, so one other thing, I have that piece and that piece. These, I'm going to cut this out, is I'm going to actually spray this just with a little bit of shimmer spray, only to kind of break up the fibers a little bit. So it doesn't really matter. This has a color to it. It doesn't really matter if it has a color because it is a green cardstock. You're not going to see it. But if you were doing this on white and you accidentally added some re-inker to it, you might want to be careful because it will change the color of your cardstock. So I'm going to just spray this like so. And then I'm going to put this in here. And I kind of try to use this nice little line here to line them up if I have a piece that's square to the end, but if not, it's no worries. So this one, when you run this through, this is one of the 3D embossing folders from Stampin' Up, and they are just slightly different from the prior 3D embossing folders we used to have. So you want to use the blue plate, so we'll call this the blue plate special. And I'm going to put this, I have my folder and just a platform, nothing else. And we're going to crank this through the Big Shot. And then we're going to do one other one. We're going to just swap pieces. So this is the magnetic platform. So I'm going to put my cutting plate, and I'm going to try not to put this through it straight because you don't want the blades going over because it can warp your dies. So I'm going to kind of just line this up, and I'm going to move it down just a little bit because I want this sentiment to be more at the end. So I just have it kind of on there a little bit sideways. If it does shift a little bit, you can always put a little piece of purple tape, washi tape, whatever you have. We're going to put your other cutting plate on top. So again, this is for die cutting. You're going to use, I like the magnetic plate, especially if you have flat plates because it does really stick. So magnetic plate, 2 cutting plates, and then your die on the inside. And then all we have to do is assemble this card. So let me just show you what we have here. So we have our really deeply, plus it gave it a little sparkle, our deeply etched folder because we used a 3D folder, and our blue plate. So the blue plate is only for embossing. You don't want to die cut with that. I did it once accidentally when I first got it because I didn't know what it was for. But it didn't affect it. However, I wouldn't do it again. I'm just going to pop this out. So there's our die cut. This over here. Put my tape back up there because I will use that over and over. And now all we have to do is assemble our card. So I'm going to put probably would be a best idea to use liquid glue because of the deep grooves of this paper. So kind of keep that in mind. I'm just being a tiny bit lazy, so that's why I have this. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball where I want this. Pretty much in the center. Nice part about if you use liquid glue is too, you can also kind of move it around a little bit. I'm going to put this piece on top. You could also pop this up with dimensionals if you want, but I'm going to pop up my other piece. I'm going to kind of line this up. And let's see, I'm going to kind of try and keep that centered to the top. So there's that. And then I'm going to grab a couple of dimensionals. Now I'm going to use white dimensionals. I did one time make the mistake of using black dimensionals behind white paper, and I'm going to tell you, I could see it the entire time. So don't repeat my mistake. Be careful. Let me just grab, I want to put in just a couple more because I don't want my corners to be droopy. So I'm going to put one more here, and I'm just using the end pieces of my, put one here, of my mini dimensional. So if you're wondering why these are so big, oops, there we go. All right, so I'm going to just pull these off. Kind of line this up, let it overlap just a little bit. Kind of trying to keep it centered. Okay, so that looks nice. All right, so the final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add, I'm just going to do a couple little drops of liquid glue. So let's see, we'll do, how about we'll do 3. We'll kind of try to keep them a little bit together. So just forming a little triangle there. And then I'm going to grab the Take Your Pick tool, the putty end here, which is going to help me pick up the sequins. And I wish I would have gotten these sequins before, because quite honestly, I would have used these on the other card. So there are different types of sequins. There are round sequins, and then there are ones that actually look like little flowers. So I'm going to put one of those. And I think I want a gold and a black. All right, now these sequins will take just a moment, actually more than a few moments to dry because they are on liquid glue. So kind of make sure that you have this, that way it has time to, goodness gracious, I'm making a heck of a mess here. Must be a lot of static in the air because these sequins do not want to let go. You could also, if you wanted to, I had one other club member put sequins kind of all over the place. So you could spread them around if you wanted to as well. So very easy, simple card. Really not a whole lot of effort to it, but it does have a lot of punch, really, because you emboss this, have a little bit of shimmer spray on there as well. Nice sentiment. So again, this is done 3 different ways. This one is a really simple version, just the 3 panels. This one is stepped up a little bit because it does have the lighter, and then you have your little gems on there. And then this is just a different variance of the same stepped up card, but instead we use the sequins. So I hope you found this video useful. Thank you so much for stopping in today and hanging out with me. Again, this used the Peaceful Moments stamp set and the Label Me Bold stamp set, which I think is really fun because it has these nice background elements. And then the images in here are actually solid. So one thing you do want to make sure when you stamp these images, if you're going to use them, really make sure that you're very well inked up. And if you have trouble with getting it to get a solid image, sometimes you can also stamp this first in Versamark and then in the ink color, because the Versamark will help the ink to stick to it. And just make sure that you give even pressure. So when you stamp this, you kind of push down the whole thing before you lift up. But it's great for being able to cut out this little sentiment really simply with paper snips. So really easy addition to a card. So thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. If you'd like to get any of the supplies and more to make this card, you can go to my online store, rachthestamper.stampinup.net. 24/7 is always open. And if you have any questions, you can leave me a comment here on YouTube, or you can send me an email at rachthestamper@gmail.com. Thanks so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.